she'll start that pill.
Oh, okay, good.
Coffee's coming through, guys.
Talk to the
Uh,
drug company?
The, paperwork is going faxed over to them, so we should be hearing from them. If they okay it, then they'll send it to the house, so. It's good to have you back.
It's good to be back, real good. Coffee's coming through.
Yay!
What?
Oh, I got about 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
By mistake.
Is
Like my phone went off and then it was like I hit.
she work hard, is she okay?
She's okay.
Here he comes.
Hey, Mr.
Hello.
Glenn, welcome back. I didn't get a chance to talk to you on Sunday. Oh, let me know what you got. What you got. I love the thing I swear to God.
What is the hardest part of having a pant as
I didn't hear the punchline.
putting a leash on it?
What?
The hardest part of having a pet, I mean, the hardest part of having a pant as a pet is putting a leash on it.
That's funny.
I laughed a lot when I heard it. I said, I knew she would like it.
I love it. Love it, love it.
Missed you Sunday, Glenn.
I missed you. I missed you. Me and Daryl, we didn't know what to do. But actually, Dennis covered, he went up and got both of the plates and brought them back.
Oh, that's good.
He brought them back. That's usually yours.
Yeah, we do that when we check them out before surface start. You know, we run around there and get behind, right across the house. Another Sunday.
Are you feeling better?
Hello?
My brother called me.
Yeah.
That Sunday he probably has to work till 2. So you can come over after, if that's okay, or.
Hey, Mr. Glenn. Yeah. Where do werewolves buy Christmas gifts? East by. Why is Santa good at karate? He has black belt. Those were today's jokes.
Yeah.
Hey, I love it.
That's a problem, they keep moving them around during the day. They never stay where they're supposed to.
Be careful, man.
I'm waiting until it's done. I'm not about to try that.
Hi, Laura from the palm trees.
Sorry.
No. Yeah, I talked to her just before I
Yeah.
did. The outburst, the zipper just ripped all up. Well, when I was upstairs cleaning up after that kid, I found this purse.
Oh, fair enough.
So I said, well, I'll just bring it downstairs and see if it works. And it did.
You should tell her that you like the
So,
cold
free.
beans. Tell her you should let her.
If I remember. We're missing a couple people.
Oil will probably come and add some.
Yeah.
Even though they should stagger it.
He keeps sending me out stuff. That, little thing.
It,
was
well, the
enough
time on the wall says 6.
It wasn't working right, covering enough the spot, so what I did is
Well, I think your watch is a little slow.
I reached from here.
It's 6 right on the dot. So I heard the door. I don't know. The phone says it's 6.
Yep.
Well, I don't
Aye.
have to do it.
No, he better wait.
Lock them girls out.
I know.
They might have
They
a
can look
key.
through the window.
Yeah.
It's too windy out there.
They just watch the YouTube stream, stand outside.
If they have questions, they could sign it. You
Yeah,
can-
Yeah, there you go.
you translate it.
There you go.
Yeah. Maybe do that.
Grandma? It'd be nice.
Thought I heard the door.
There you go. There's the little one.
Okay. Out of curiosity, is Addison behind you? What? Okay, because I'm thinking about starting.
Do it.
Now the coffee's done. Now everybody's going to get up to go get coffee.
It's okay.
Rachel, my cup's over there, fill it up and bring it over here.
Yeah, here,
What's that?
here's mine.
Standing over there.
You should bring them the pot. Paul needs a cup.
Well, it's 2 minutes after, so I think I'm just going to get started. I'm just going to start jabbering. If anybody's watching this online, I know they don't like to wait around too long. I've heard comments. Anyway, well, Chloe? So we'll get started. Seems like we got a little bit of a late start with coffee, and I don't know. I think there's somebody straggling out there. What book did we just finish studying? Joshua. All right. So I think usually somebody gives me a reprieve for a couple of weeks. It didn't happen this time. Anyway, we're just going to hop into Judges. I know everybody is super excited for the book of Judges, aren't we?
It is kind of a
It's
fun
like a
book.
continuation.
Well, it is a continuation. It starts off really
It's
strange.
very, feels
I-
very bipolar, that's for sure.
I thought it
Yeah.
felt like a deja vu. We've already gone over.
Yeah,
some
a lot of
Okay, so we're gonna talk about that in just a minute. It is a follow up to the book of Joshua. The Bible that I. Hey, Chloe, you want to grab some creamer?
They'll bring it to you.
Yeah, they'll bring it to you. It'll help you out. The Bible that I normally read out of, I don't have an introduction to it, but I do have the New King James Version on my computer, and I like the intro that it said. So I'm going to share some of the thoughts that it had on there, just to kind of give us an introduction to the book. It's probably Addison coming in.
Yeah, the door's still unlocked.
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. All right. So then if you use the Olive Tree Bible program and you have the New King James Version, I feel like everybody's so distracted. I feel like I'm talking to myself.
I'm listening.
Are you guys listening? All right. So I'll read this to you. The book of Judges stands in stark contrast to, can you guess which book?
Joshua.
All right, you're following along. Very good. So in Joshua, an obedient people conquered the land through trust in the power of God. In Judges, however, a disobedient and idolatrous people are defeated time and time again because of their rebellion against God. Laura, I'm glad you're following along on YouTube through all this craziness. They go on to say, in 7 distinct cycles of sin to salvation, Judges show how Israel had set aside God's law and in its place substituted, quote, that which was right in his own eyes, chapter 21, verse 25. The recurring result of abandonment from God's law is corruption from within and oppression from without. During the nearly 4 centuries spanned by this book, so thinking about that, this book covers nearly 400 years of Israel history. God raises up military champions to throw off the yoke of bondage and to restore the nation to pure worship. Those are the judges, okay, that God raises up. But all too soon, the, quote, sin cycle begins again as the nation's spiritual temperature grows steadily colder. And I'm going to just jump to the last sentence in that introduction in the Olive Tree. It says, in this last sentence, it says, this book could also appropriately be titled The Book of Failures. That's pretty sad. I also heard the book of Judges described as the dark ages in Israel's history. So some pretty bleak ways to describe it. Sometimes we want to hear motivational lessons that are uplifting. Judges might not be the book to do that for us, but there's some good, valuable lessons in this book. So I think a question that a person might ask is, why in the world should we study the book of Judges? And let me give you a few reasons. All right, reason number one, it does provide historical context. It's history. It's part of Israel history. Book of Judges covers a significant period of Israelite history from the time of Joshua's conquest of the Promised Land to the establishment of the monarchy under King Saul. So we can see the historical, spiritual side of the Israelite people during this time. Studying this book can help us understand the historical, social, cultural context in which many of the events in the Old Testament take place. You think sometimes we forget the historical context of some of these books that we read about? I think context is very important. And so the history as to what's going on in the culture and all that really helps us understand. So number one, historical context. Number two, it reveals God's character. So this book reveals God's character to us. The book of Judges shows us how God interacts with his people, both in times of faithfulness and in times of disobedience. We see God's faithfulness to his promises, his justice, his mercy, as he works through flawed humans to accomplish his purposes. So we learn more about God's character. Number three, it teaches important lessons, as we've already said. The accounts and the characters in the book of Judges teaches us important lessons about faith, obedience. We learn more about leadership, the consequences of sin. By studying these lessons, we can gain wisdom and insight for our own lives and the relationship that we have with God. So we have the historical context. We learn more about God and his character. Number three, it teaches us some important lessons. Number four, it also points to Christ. So there are prophetic foreshadowings of Christ. And so studying these prophetic things, we can gain a deeper understanding of God's plan for salvation through Christ. So that's some of the reasons why we can study this particular book. But as a couple people were already mentioning, the book starts off with a challenge. It's right out of the gate. It is like there's a challenging thing that happens in chapter 1. And really, what we should keep in mind is chapter 1 from verse 1 through chapter 2 and verse number 6 is a retelling, if you will, or giving more insight into the conquest during the time of Joshua. And what makes this a challenge, and we know this because these things in chapter 1 through chapter 2, verse 6 happened before Joshua dies. We know this because when we get to chapter 2, verse 7 and following, well, it talks about Joshua dying. So it kind of goes over that. But what makes it challenging is the way verse number 1 is worded. Where it says, now after the death of Joshua, it came to pass that the children of Israel asked the Lord, saying, who shall be the first to go up for us against the Canaanites to fight against them? So the intro to Joshua, or to the book of Judges, is very similar to Joshua. You remember in Joshua chapter 1, verse number 1? After the death of Moses. So whoever wrote this, the writer of Judges, is writing this from the perspective that he's writing this after Joshua had died. But he is retelling. He's having I don't know, I was trying to view it this way because it was a little bit mind-boggling to me, but I was trying to, taking it from this perspective, it's like he was giving a flashback. We read books that have flashbacks. Right? How about TV shows, movies? They do that a lot, right? Sometimes, what were we watching the other day? We were trying to decide, is this a flashback? Was this not a flashback? Anyway, it doesn't matter what we were watching. But TV shows will do that. So it starts off, again, if you will, with a flashback to what was happening in Canaan. And that right there sets up the remainder of the background of the historical context of some of the challenges that the Israelite people were facing. And I just mentioned the writer chose to start the book off with this. Who wrote the book of Judges?
I have an author unknown, possibly Samuel.
Okay, so we know that God was the author. The human penman, nobody really knows. I was thinking about this a little bit earlier. It seems like a lot of people will debate who wrote Hebrews, right? Was it Paul?
Yeah.
Was it Luke? Was it? I've heard people say Aquila, like Priscilla and Aquila. I don't know how they even remotely get that. Anyway, there's so much, like, it's like mysterious. Like, people will. There's articles and reports about that. What about Judges, right? I mean, nobody knows for sure. Anyway, the traditional view is that Samuel wrote it about the time, when he lived during the times of Saul and David, so about 1000 BC. So anyway, we don't argue over tradition, so don't really know who wrote it, but God wrote it, right? It was God's inspired word. All right, so we're going to read this. Oh, young ladies, can you hand these out really quick? There were some, I knew we were going to have an introduction, so I knew that was going to eat a little bit into time. And then we do have some names in the book of Judges. So I did some of the whole bolding thing. We'll read these bolden words. That the key word would be apostasy. All right, can anybody define what the word apostasy means? Okay, falling away or departing from God would be a simple way to put it. All right, so everybody got a sheet. Everybody have questions for this week? Anybody need them? I think everybody's got. Did you get a sheet? You weren't here last week. All right. Okay, so Judges. No, I'm talking about the questions. Did Mom get you questions for that? All right. So Judges chapter 1, starting in verse number 1. It says, "Now after the death of Joshua," then we skip down, "the children of Israel asked the Lord, who shall be the first to go up for us against the Canaanites? Verse 2, "And the Lord said, Judah shall go. I have delivered the land into his hand." So Judah, verse 3, said to Simeon, "Come up with me, that we may fight against the Canaanites." And Simeon went with him. In verse 4, it said, "The Lord delivered the Canaanites and the Perizzites into their hand, and they killed 10,000 men." And verse 5, they found Adoni-Bezek and fought against him. Then Adoni-Bezek fled, and they pursued him and caught him and cut off his thumbs and big toes. The last part of verse 7 says, "Then they brought him to Jerusalem, and there he died. Now the children of Judah fought against Jerusalem and took it and set the city on fire. And afterward the children of Judah went down to fight against the Canaanites." And the end of verse 10 says, "And they killed Shishai, Hyman, and Talmai. From there they went against the inhabitants of Debir." Verse 12, "Then Caleb said, Whoever attacks Kirjath-Sepher and takes it, to him I will give my daughter Achash as wife. And Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, took it, so he gave him his daughter Achash as wife." Verse 14, "When she came to him, that she urged him to ask her father for a field, and she dismounted from her donkey, and Caleb said to her, What do you wish? So she said to him, Give me a blessing, since you have given me land in the south, give me also springs of water. And Caleb gave her the upper springs and the lower springs." Verse 16, "Now the children of the Kenite, Moses' father-in-law, went with the children of Judah into the wilderness of Judah, and they went and dwelt among the people. And Judah went with his brother Simeon, and they attacked the Canaanites, utterly destroyed it. In verse 18, "Also Judah took Gaza, Ashkelon, and Ekron." Verse 19, "So the Lord was with Judah, and they drove out the mountaineers, but they could not drive out the inhabitants of the lowland, because they had chariots of iron. And they gave Hebron to Caleb, as Moses had said." Verse 21, but the children of Benjamin did not drive out the Jebusites who inhabited Jerusalem. So the Jebusites dwell with the children of Benjamin in Jerusalem to this day. And the house of Joseph also went up against Bethel, and the Lord was with them. We drop down to verse 24. When the spies saw a man coming out of the city, they said to him, please show us the entrance to the city, and we will show you mercy. So he showed them to the entrance to the city, and they struck the city with the edge of the sword, but they let the man and all his family go. And the man went to the land of the Hittites, built a city, and called its name Luz, which is its name to this day. So even with that a little bit abbreviated, that was a kind of a long read. Yeah. All right. So question number 1: what tribe of Israel first attacked the Canaanites after Joshua's death? And that's the way it's worded in the text.
Judah.
All right. Judah, verse 2. Did they ask anybody to come along and join? Simeon.
Yes.
All right. So that would be verse number 3. So Judah. They asked Simeon to join in the fight, verses 2 and 3. Who did they consult before just going to war? All right, so they went directly to God, and did they obey God? All right, so they obeyed God. Do you think God was okay with Simeon joining in on the fight?
He must have been, because he blessed their battle, so.
That's what I put on my sheet. I mean, I would, God delivered them, and what I jotted down here is if God was opposed to it, they wouldn't have been successful in their fight. Anybody got anything different? Anything extra? All right, question number 2. What did the men of Judah do to Adonai-Bezek after they captured him?
This is another weird one. They cut off his thumbs and big toes.
Verse number
6.
Verse 6.
And then
Anybody?
they brought him to Jerusalem to die, which is verse 7.
All right. Okay.
Which must have been a thing, because he said he's had many at his feet with thumbs and toes cut off, so.
Okay. So anybody get anything different than that, or did everybody get that in? That is kind of
No,
weird,
I-
right? We're kind of what?
I was gonna say no, but I did find it interesting that he was Adonai Bezek, found at Bezek. So I looked up Adonai, and it means my Lord, so he must be like,
The
I guess,
Lord
the
of,
king.
yeah.
So it's just another title, like the
yeah.
king of Bezek.
Yep. Kind of like Pharaoh. Pharaoh was a title,
really
not
his
really their name.
name.
Yeah. So had he done this to others?
Yeah, 70 kings.
So maybe this was his thing, maybe he liked to do this.
Yeah.
So
Well-
it's come back around to him.
Well, if you research this, why would a person, let's start with the fingers, why would you cut off a thumb?
Because it's
Really hard to do anything.
Hold your weapon.
Whoa, hold on. Chuck's got a great answer. Why, Chuck? Say it really loud.
So you can't text.
So you can't text.
I'm sure that's what it was.
So they can't hold a weapon, because it's
So you
hard
can't-
to...
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, it would be harder. You probably could, but it's going to fall out of your, you can't really grasp onto something, all right? So texting, this was a few thousand years before the tablet. Moses had tablets. Anyway, and he got his message from the cloud. So bad joke. All right, so you can't grasp a weapon. That would be first. What about your big toe?
It gives you
Your
balance.
balance
It's
is
hard to
all
walk
off,
without
so.
your toes.
I mean, you could do it, and you can learn. In fact, I Googled it. Like, what happens if you lose your big toe? They're like, there's exercises you can do to regain your balance.
But back then they didn't know that.
No, they didn't know that because they didn't have Google, I don't think. And
I mean, especially if they didn't have their thumbs.
they couldn't. You just use your.
Tortures life from
Yeah.
there on out. Like,
And-
you can't do much.
And in modern times, they say, well, you can have special shoes, and you. They didn't have. What shoes did they didn't? Yeah, sandals. So
You gotta
it would.
if they had let him live, he probably wouldn't have been able to like feed himself or do a whole lot, because they didn't know those things back then. And walking around, forget it. And at that point, he'd have been an outcast.
In some ways, it would be more torturous to lose your the capability to defend yourself, and you can't run away very easily
Could the
Yes.
sandals stay on pretty good without big toes?
Probably, but your balance is going to be, because you're
Depends
going to,
on your type of sandal.
and it depends on where it's strapped. I mean, yeah.
Some of them are just like, anyway.
Man, now you got me wondering, if I remove my toe, like how would my shoe
Let's
fit?
find
I
out,
don't,
Brian.
anyway.
I like take rope and.
I didn't bring my axe with me, but I could. We have a volunteer.
No,
Okay. So anyway, he had done that to other people, and it's almost like he's just accepting the fact that he's being paid back for how he treated other people. And then he went down to Jerusalem and he died. So probably more torturous than necessarily just killing him right away. Question number 3: What did the tribe of Judah do to the Jebusites who inhabited Jerusalem?
Okay, I had to go back to Joshua for this one. But they struck the city with the sword and set it on fire. And then in Joshua 15:63 it says they could not drive them out.
Okay. Anybody got anything different?
I thought it was the tribe of Benjamin that did it.
I did too, and it is, but Joshua 15:63 specifically said the tribe of Judah did not drive out the Jebusites from Jerusalem.
And it says, verse number 8, the children of Judah fought against Jerusalem and took it. So Chloe got kind of hung up on that too. And verse 8, does it say Jebusites there in verse 8?
Yeah.
No, but what does it say in verse 21?
The Jebusites
Where did they live?
in Jerusalem.
In Jerusalem. So
Children of Benjamin
you
did not
got-
drive out the Jebusites.
But go back to Joshua 15:63.
So Benjamin didn't drive them out, but Judah killed them. And we'll talk more about kind of what this means here in a second. Let me look at my notes. All right, so the Jebusites of Jerusalem was not taken until the reign of David. That was a long time after this. Right, so we already said that this book covered 400 years. Saul reigned approximately 400 years. Saul reigned 70 years until David came around. So they didn't really take Jerusalem until 2 Samuel chapter 5. Yes. 2 Samuel 5, verses 6 through 9. So how do we explain this? Judah came down, the tribe of Judah, they came down, they fought the Jebusites, they killed the Jebusites that were there, they left. There were other Jebusites that were around that came back and they stayed in Jerusalem. Nobody really forced them out, and nobody really had a stronghold in the city there. Does that make sense?
yeah.
So question number 4, what city was to be captured that Caleb offered his daughter Achash as a prize?
Kirjath.
All right, verse
Well,
number 12. All right, so I came across this from the Easton's Bible Dictionary. They said this was the city of books. This Canaanite city, they said, were probably acquainted with writing and books. The town probably contained a noted school or was the site of an oracle and residence of some learned priest. And these books, they call them, were probably engraved stones or bricks. So they had
Big old
tablets.
library.
It was kind of like a library, and they had tablets there. Yep. So that was from Easton's Bible Dictionary. Hitchcock called it the city of letters. The city of books, city of letters. He had a couple of dictionary guys who were confirming each other. So Kirjath Sefer. Question number 5 kind of goes along with this, right? What does Achash ask her father for in addition to the land he's already given her? Whoa, I had 2 answers. Springs.
Water.
Well,
Okay.
verse 14, she asked for a field. Verse 15, he gave her the upper springs and the lower springs.
well, verse 14, she suggests
Well-
that he asked for the field, but
Yeah.
the field was never actually asked for.
She already
Yeah.
had the.
Yeah, she already-
had the allotment of
Yeah.
land. But she wanted water.
Yeah. He gave her the land. She wanted some water. She must have been thirsty. She wanted to stay hydrated.
I also put in 11.
All right. Okay, so yeah, it would have.
Oh, that's good.
So yeah. Have we read verses or questions 4 and 5 before? Have we read about that before?
Yes.
Do you remember where that was recorded? You people. All right, let's be more specifics here.
I'm gonna say it was like 15, because that
15
question
verse
before that came from 15.
All right, so
15, 16.
very good. So verse 16 through 19, 15 through 19, that little section there. This here in Judges is almost verbatim.
Yeah.
It is like identical. Like you could put the two together and felt some deja vu while going through this. All right. Question number 6. What did the tribe of Benjamin fail to, or who would be a better way to say it, who did the tribe of Benjamin fail to drive out from their allotted land? All right, the Jebusites. So you had Judah, the tribe of Judah fought them, but Benjamin failed to get them out of there. What verse did you find that in? 21. Verse 21. So we're already starting here at the beginning of the book. We're seeing some success, aren't we? And then we're seeing some failure. And this is really where we begin this failure part, because Judah and Simeon, they were successful in their fights. And now there's a change of tone starting to take place, verse 21 and following. Question number 7, what did the house of Joseph do to the inhabitants of Bethel?
The city with the edge of the sword.
All right, verse.
25.
Okay, so everybody got that? So they had a sword, and they all went up to this city that had walls, and they just started hitting the walls. Is that?
Yep.
No.
Feel like it's Minecraft. There was some Minecraft discussion. Minecraft's a video game for those that are not. He's like sitting there.
It's a figurative way of saying they went in and they killed the people.
All right, so it's kind of a tainted down or a sugar coated. How do you say that? Not a euphemism. It's kind of watered down. It's kind of softened.
Well, you see how they're letting some people go and killing some. So do you think that this is why they're not very successful? Because they're just not going in and wiping them out?
That absolutely leads to their downfall.
They're like, well, if you let me know, I'll let your family go.
Yeah. Well.
Picking and choosing.
Yep. So this section here talked about spies going up, right, to the city. And was there somebody coming out of the city?
Yeah.
Some guy.
Some
Just some random
some random guy. And what did the spies ask?
So,
Like, if you tell us where you can get in, we'll let you and your family go.
So they're like, hey, random dude, how did we get into that? So does that kind of describe the city to us? Like, because if you're just driving down the interstate, do you really have to ask anybody, hey, where's the entrance to Detroit? You don't really have to do that. It just
Obviously,
happens.
This was a pretty big city.
Big city. So
And the
would it-
walls were pretty.
So they had walls. So
Yeah.
it would have been a fortified city. So obviously they just didn't go up with their little pickaxe. Not their pickaxe.
They
Yeah,
had
they
to
were an
have
awfully
bricks
long-
right in order to have them.
Tap the bricks. Harry Potter reference there. Strange. So they asked the man, hey man, how do we get in to the place? And the man pointed the way. He kind of pointed the,
Okay, and
he's like,
this speaks to their reputation, though, because think about this. He's in a very big, fortified city with people who are soldiers. So he obviously knew their reputation because he was like, maybe I'll do that because I want to be spared because chances are you're going to get in here anyways, even if I don't show you, and we're all going to be annihilated. So I just want to escape.
so the guy's like, if you let me and my family survive, I'll point you in the way to go. And and he survived, didn't he? And he went away and he made his own city. That's kind of a,
So
Kind
they
of
could
I claim this piece of
ask God, show us the door.
Yeah.
some people, and I could not find this again, but there were some commentators that even viewed that as a kind of a failed thing.
It was a failed thing because, like she said, they could have asked God and God could have shown them. And here we go. God's told you to drive out all the people. And you were like, well, just this one guy and his family. Okay. And
But-
that's not all the people.
but
We've
maybe-
already seen one guy.
But maybe they just had fresh in their minds a little bit. Does it sound even remotely similar to another incident
Yeah, like
in the book of
that-
Joshua?
Yeah, they just had the incident where they let the one guy.
Well, how about something even earlier in Joshua, like way back at the
Rahab.
beginning? Rahab
Oh, yeah.
and
That's- I
the
was thinking
spies,
Rahab and her
and these were
husband.
spies,
Yeah.
so maybe they were like, hey, we're spies. This guy's helping us.
Yeah.
We'll just let him go. I don't know. I'd have to relook at why some other people think it's a failure. I did think it was just a random guy went
Well, I also
with his
think
family,
they
made a
got-
city.
They
Just
got cocky though too,
Yeah.
because they're
Oh.
like, oh yeah, we're big
yeah.
and bad, you know, we're taking on all these other cities, so
Yeah.
they were putting all of their power in themselves.
Yep, absolutely. I'm just glancing through my notes here because I thought I wrote
That's why they didn't
something.
take the city.
Uh,
They thought they took it.
all right, excellent. I don't know. I'll keep. It'll come to me. Between this lesson starting in Judges and then we're starting a brand new lesson on Sunday morning, I've been looking at all kinds of introductions and just all these new thoughts. And then Nahum's a hoot. You all should tune in for Nahum. Anyway, anybody got anything different for the book of number 7? Question 7. They struck the city with the edge of the sword, right? They killed everybody, verse 25. All right, so let's continue on. We're going to pick up verse 27. It says, however, Manasseh did not drive out the inhabitants. And you can read all their names and their villages. For the Canaanites were determined to dwell in that land. In verse number 28, and it came to pass when Israel was strong that they put the Canaanites under tribute, but did not completely drive them out. Nor did Ephraim drive out the Canaanites, nor did Zebulun drive out the inhabitants. Verse 31, nor did Asher drive out the inhabitants. Verse 33, nor did Naphtali drive out the inhabitants. And then verse 34, and the Amorites forced the children of Dan into the mountains, for they would not allow them to come down to the valley. And the Amorites were determined to dwell in Mount Heres. Yet when the strength of the house of Joseph became greater, they were put under tribute. Now, verse 36, the boundary of the Amorites was from the ascent, the Akrabim from Selah and upward. So you get a little bit of the boundaries of the Amorite people. So question number 8, what did the tribe of Manasseh... Oh, before I even read this, let me tell you, Matthew Henry in his commentary, he said Israel was careless of their duty. They were slothful. They were cowardice. And this is what I was trying to look for in my notes. It was in so tiny writing over here. They were covetous. And they took advantage of these people. Did you notice how some of these tribes, Canaanites were there, let's use them. They put them under them. So did that ever come back to haunt the Israelite people? It sure did. And we're going to see that. So they suffered the consequences. So question number 8, what did the tribe of Manasseh do to the people of Bethshean and its villages?
Did not drive them out and put them under tribute.
All right. And they didn't drive them out, put them under tribute. What does that mean? They put them under, what's a tribute?
They're like slaves.
Slaves or your...
If you've got an agreement with them, like, hey, you're gonna do blah, blah, blah.
They had to give them something.
Give them something in return, maybe like money, gifts, bribery. Doesn't that sound like I'm not going to say any groups specifically because I don't want to get in any trouble, but don't they call like shaking people down or something? You have like people that'll come around and they're like, you give me money, and if you don't, so we're going to have somebody come visit you. So that's kind of what's going on here. They're abusing these. They're taking advantage of these people. And they also, they didn't drive them out of this area. And you can read, the list of names there in those villages and that. The one name popped out at me, right? Dor. Remember we talked about the Dor Heights? I remember that. It was kind of like Madison Heights, Sterling Heights. Anyway, there was Dor Heights, Megiddo Heights. I'm just kidding. It doesn't say that. All right. Asher jumped out. Oh, okay. So it does say the tribe of Manasseh. Would this been the whole tribe of Manasseh?
Just the tribe that was on this side.
Right, so it would have been the half tribe, because the other half was, they were back in the other home.
Where they did what they were supposed to.
Right. So question number 9, which tribes failed to drive out the inhabitants of their allotted territory?
I have Manasseh, verse 27, Ephraim, verse 29, Zebulun, verse 30, Asher, verse 31, Naphtali, verse 33, Benjamin, verse 21, and technically Dan, even though it's not worded that way.
Okay, very good. Anybody got anything different? All right, excellent. So, you can go to a concordance, you can look up to see what people say about these different cities, and some of them there's not much information about them, if anything. Something that did jump out at me was Ephraim didn't drive out the inhabitants. Let's see, verse 29. They didn't drive out the Canaanites who dwelt in Gezer. What Ephraim and the Israelites couldn't do, they couldn't take that city. You know who eventually did? Pharaoh. Pharaoh took it. That was kind of interesting. So the Israelites failed. They had God on their side. Pharaoh took the city, and Pharaoh, much, much later in Israel's history, he gave that city as a present to his daughter. And can you guess who his daughter was married to? It was a king. Sorry, I choked you up. It was a king, Solomon. He gave the city as a present to his daughter, who was married to Solomon. And you read all about that, 1 Kings 9, verse 16. So all that time passed. You had about 400 years in Judges. You had 70 years of Saul. You had 70 years of David. And sometime, so you're looking at over 500 years of history. The Israelites failed in taking that city. They should have. Pharaoh did it. I don't know. Could they have taken it? They could have. They had God on their side. They could have.
So he gave it to his daughter who was married to
Solomon. Yeah, 1 Kings 9:16. Question number 10. What happened to the children of Dan in their territory?
forced them into the mountains.
All right.
Wouldn't let them come down to the valley.
All right. Verse 34. Who forced them up into the...
The Amorites.
People they're supposed to get rid of.
All right. So the Amorites. People say, the way it's worded in here, and I'd have to really dig into this again, but the way it's worded is the Canaanites were in control of this region. Amorites were kind of not as powerful as the Canaanites. They were under the Canaanites, kind of in pecking order, I guess, if you will. And they bullied the people of Dan, didn't they? Forced them up in the mountains. This is just an interesting thing that I came across. The Amorites, typically, and this was Barnes' commentary, typically the Amorites, they were the ones dwelling in the mountains. But for whatever case, they chose to live down in the valley, and they were forcing Dan to live up in the mountains. Do you think this is a good situation? Do you think this was a good thing that was going on here?
Nope.
Ungodly, wicked people pushing godly people into, you're controlling them, pushing them. It was a sad situation for the people of Dan. It was pointed out in all the various resources. They said it's really sad that you had all these tribes not doing what they should have been doing. Manasseh, Ephraim, Zebulun, Asher, Naphtali, Benjamin. But out of all of that, probably the saddest was the fact that Dan, the people of Dan, were the ones being bullied and shoved up into the mountainside, or mountaintops. All right, I've been waiting excitedly for the bonus question for like 2 weeks. From verses 16 through 21, and using the New King James Version, I had to specify that because the ESV did not have it worded this way. So you had to use the New King James Version. I don't even know if the King James Version had it worded this way, but New King James did, right? What college mascot was, quote, drove out, and then I gave some hints, And so verses 16 through 21, what's the answer?
Mountaineers.
The Mountaineers. And what college mascot are they? The
West Virginia.
All right, West Virginia. I was reading through there, I was like, Mountaineers? I got to think of some funny question about that. Verse number
19.
19. All right, very good. Somebody in our family, not going to say names, kind of gave away the answer to the bonus question. So there was a young person in our family that thought, hey, I already got the answer. I said, well, where's the verse? You got to give me the verse. She goes, we didn't ask for the verse. I said, but we always give the verse. So anyway, wait till you see the bonus question for next week.
Yay.
All right, any other thoughts, questions, comments? Probably should warn us that probably the book of Judges is going to be maybe a little bit gory, but
Cutting off thumbs.
That was mild compared to what we did later.
maybe they'll water it down, or maybe they'll soften it for us. Maybe they'll use softer words.
Yeah, okay. Maybe.
We'll see. All right. What, Chloe? If not, we could just read it from the Message. I don't know. Anyway, now I'm intrigued. I wonder how some of that's worded in there. I'll have to look later.
And then they struck them. And that's what they say.
They'll just abbreviate it, like more abbreviated. Yeah. All right. If there is nothing else, Glenn, I know we didn't pre-plan this, but would you mind doing the prayer tonight? Thank you.
Our great and kind Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. Thank you for this opportunity to come here tonight and study your word. We pray, Lord, that everything we did was pleasing to you and glorifying you. Pray that you be with Brian, be with him as he comes up with these lessons, help him in his efforts, and pray that he will continue to do the good job that he's been doing. We pray that you be with the sick of our number. Please be with, specifically be with Dawn Thornton. I hope she's out of the hospital now. And I pray you continue to be with her, be with everybody that's been mentioned. Pray a blessing on John Barker. Pray that you will be with him and help the doctors as they deal with his cancer. And pray, Lord, that you would be with us in all the works that's done here. Bless them. Pray that you now forgive us for our sins. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. All right. Thank you.
I could say, or Jonah, where Nineveh they were fish slappers. They would slap you across the face with the fish.
Probably shouldn't get our theology from VeggieTales. Anyway, thank you guys.
Kids. Or she was just reading some
All right.
secular
no.
history that they were actually
We'll see you next Wednesday for Judges 2.
and how they